Hi, my name is Beckett Haight, and I'm originally from California and started volunteering when I was 16 in a classroom with students with developmental delays. And that led to me, after graduating high school, I became a teacher assistant in the district, and I worked part-time off and on for the next 4 years during college. And I've been teaching my way around the world for the past, I don't know, it's been a while, since I was 23. I'll leave it at that. My experience with co-teaching began in my second year as a teacher. The first year I was a special day class teacher, teaching biology, English, and social studies. But year two, they wanted to pilot a program, a push-in program, or co-teaching, and where half of the class, biology, ninth grade biology, 15 students, were my whole caseload from the special day class program. And then the other 15 students were students that were in the regular ed program or the EAL program. And so basically they sent me to a 2-day training up there in Napa Valley. And I came back and I was working with a teacher that was working on her master's. So there wasn't co-planning. She said, "Hey, I'm busy. I've never done this before. This class is huge. Let's see what happens." We did as much as we could. We were offering choice, we were differentiating, scaffolding, doing different modalities. And I think in the long run, it was good for the kids socially, but it was tough. But I will say one good thing is we found that a student in my special day program was actually one of the top students in the whole class. And that experience led us to have him get exited from the special day program and become part of the gen ed and the resource program, which was a really good win. I then moved to LA in California, and I became the high functioning students with autism inclusion teacher. And that opened up a whole lot for co-teaching and push-in support, as I worked with 2 different grade levels with 8 teachers at each time. And I just got a lot of experience, co-planning, co-teaching, and all that stuff. So I worked with all types of different teachers. I worked with the health teacher, geometry, algebra 1, chemistry. That was tough. I had to just use all my skills, not the academic skills, but like the learning specialist skills, and really try to do my best with that. Helped out in biology, English 9, English 10. Then I moved on to the Dominican Republic, and I worked at like an American style AP school and pushed into English 9 and 10, geometry, algebra, physical science. And I've collaborated and pushed in with more along the way, like in Mexico with biology, English 8, math 8. And in Ethiopia, that was my first IB school. And I worked a lot with the DP teachers, the diploma program teachers, to help support the learners in all the math, in geography, and English. It was just a lot of students that needed support, but we weren't used to a lot of the collaboration and a little bit of the co-teaching, but not that much in the DP. And just looking at this screen of how many different subjects I've supported, either through a collaboration model or through push-in, co-teaching, it's a trip. I can't believe I've done all that, but anyways. The plan today is to use my varied experiences to maybe help other teachers and other students in the co-taught or push-in classrooms. So the presentation is going to touch on 6 models for support when 2 adults are in the class. I've done this from 6th grade to 12th grade, and I've seen it work in the lower school too, in the elementary school, but sometimes that's a little bit different, a little bit more targeted in the lower school, but you can use it in 100% in the upper school. And then I want to share some different examples about, successes I've had, things we've done over the years that have been beneficial. Share some tips and ideas for how to make it effective, this whole relationship, this whole co-teaching and push-in relationship, and hopefully have something you can use on Monday. And don't forget, you can use the WOVA app, and you can, communicate, you can send messages, ask questions, answer questions. This is going to be in December. I'll be there live. People will be interacting a lot, but this will be up for 4 months. So you'll be able to see all the different questions. You can answer questions, ask questions, and hopefully use it kind of like a professional learning network. If you're at a watch party, maybe in a minute you could pause the video and talk about these questions. But first, I'd recommend, if you're interested in taking notes, that you download the handout, the 6 co-teaching models handout. And that has 2 pages that you can do some little activity with that we'll do in a minute, and then take some notes. But in the meantime, if you're in a watch party or solo, maybe you can think about these questions, discuss the questions, and maybe if you're solo, you can add them to the chat and kind of tell us, what do you think of when you hear push-in support or co-teaching? Is there a difference? And now that you've had a chance to think about that, maybe I'll share my definition of push-in support, and you can kind of think if you agree. So push-in support is when 2 adults are in the general education classroom and an EAL/LS gifted teacher helps develop and or implement activities and supports that are geared towards including as many students with as many varying needs as possible in order to provide the most appropriate challenge. So I'm curious what you think about that. There might be some pushback. People say, hey, it's really hard to develop things together or implement them. You don't have the time, you don't have the co-planning. Sometimes you go to one class every other day to support, and it's hard to really implement things. Or you have too many different classes and it's really hard to just plan everything. But for me, the whole idea behind this is that we always strive to do our best, and we always work towards doing the most effective co-teaching, or push-in support. And so each year, I have my folder and I try to, add resources, add different things that we've scaffolded, differentiated, assessments we've differentiated, and slowly build that throughout the year, document that as much as possible, and Atlas, ManageBack, etc. And then hopefully the next time I co-teach in that class, I can add more resources and just, get to that point. It's nice to have an extra body in the class to help with behavior, to help with explanations and things like that. But my question I always ask myself and the teams I work with is, what's the difference between me and a teacher assistant? I used to be a teacher assistant and I was in classrooms. Now I'm a learning support teacher and I'm in classrooms, and everything that motivates me is to provide value to that classroom. If they could just have, a 20-year-old teacher assistant like I used to be, jump in the class and push in and just support, answer questions, then maybe that's what they should do. But I think that our presence in there as learning support professionals adds a lot more value. So that's just what we have to be thinking about. In thinking about a way that we're always pushing towards the maximum support, doing the maximum that we can do, I see a lot of overlap between push-in and co-teaching. And so basically I got this 2022 nice color-coded Venn diagram, and I just kind of want to go over some of the distinctions I see and some of the commonalities I see. So for push-in support, I see often there'll be little or no co-planning. And then there'll also be less thought about scheduling of students. So push-in, maybe in August, you get to school and your admin's like, hey, look at your schedule and figure out what classes you're going to push into. And then, by week 1, by a couple days in, maybe you're talking to the teacher and you guys are, trying to collaborate. Whereas co-teaching is a lot more planned ahead. Maybe in the spring, they schedule the classes, they cluster the classes, they work with, they know that the teacher's into it and stuff like that. Also, push-in support is less official. So for example, if I'm pushing into a class and I'm sick one day, I think that the teacher might give or take, oh, okay, Beckett's not here. Whereas co-teaching, they might want a sub to support what I was planning to do with a group of students. And if I wasn't there, then they'd be like, oh, well, what happened? And then also in terms of official, well, it's just a matter of how attached I am to the class. And then the final difference I see is we may only work with a small group of students. And so sometimes you might be focused on one student, and then the rest of the students are okay, or maybe you're in a lower school and you're really focused on some like tier 2 interventions or something like that. In terms of things that they both have in common, I say co-planning is an area where we both have things in common. But the push-in might be just kind of like you're, at lunch for 10 minutes, you chat about the next lesson. Whereas co-teaching, you're co-planning, for an hour a week, and you're with the other teachers, and you're going from there and developing things and adding them to the unit plans and stuff. Another thing, there's 2 adults in the classroom. So, that's nice, but it's just a matter of what you're doing with them. Students can be clustered in both situations, but the co-teaching, I think, is a little bit more thoughtful, like I mentioned before. The amount of time may be flexible. So with co-teaching, you might not need 2 teachers in the room every single day. So you might be a little bit flexible with that. Same thing with the push-in support. And then who you work with may be flexible. Even in the push-in class, I'm trying, I might not have a lot of data. I might not know exactly what I'm doing just because I just kind of jumped in. I'm just supporting if I'm doing the one teach, one support model. And but still, I might try to work with other kids too, and like try to, I don't want to alienate any certain kids. I don't want to work with the same kids every time. In regards to co-teaching, this is kind of like the quintessential, the co-assessing and like really norming the test and doing a lot of item analysis while you're co-planning and things like that, and trying to figure out next steps. That leads to co-planning. You should probably have a dedicated time to co-plan, or else you already have co-planned in the past, and then you have a shared Google Drive and you have your unit plans, and you can really like just hone things in and work asynchronously. And then working with all the learners. So maybe your content skills are a little bit better, so you're able to help all the kids. And then last thing, I'd say you just have a connection to the classroom. So for example, maybe back to school night, you are there in the class for that period, or you're on the syllabus, or you have access to the grade book. And or like the quintessential one, I don't know if any of you guys have ever been in a class when a kid asks a really basic question about the class and you don't have an answer, such as, can I use the bathroom? That's something I forget the rules. The different teachers have different rules. Or they might ask if they can take a retake on a test, or they might ask when the next test is, and the teacher, I might say, oh yeah, it's November 12th, and then the teacher will be like, oh, actually, I postponed it, things like that. But when you're co-teaching, you're usually more connected, and you've already talked about those type of things. So the main point is basically that you have an overlap between push-in and co-teaching. And the main idea is that there's 2 adults in the classroom trying to help the kids go from A to B, work in the ZPD, kind of just make growth. And we just want to do, for me, I want to do as much co-teaching, much co-planning as possible. And I'm always pushing myself, even when I feel like I'm kind of just pushing in and I'm not really doing the best I could do just because of time and all this other things going on. I'm always striving to do kind of the co-teaching as much as possible. So if this was real life, like I've done this presentation in the past, we'd have a little activity. We go to different corners and do stuff. But since we're doing it virtually, which is actually a cool thing because SENIA has 3 conferences this year. So we got a lot of different options. But you're going to need the 6 co-teaching models handout. And you can download that from the WOVA app, or I'm just going to keep this up here so you can use that. And so if you're in like a watch party, maybe you guys can break up in 3 groups. So one group will be like, I don't know really anything about co-teaching, I'm here to learn. Second group could be, yeah, I got a feel for it, but not totally sure. Third group, you're a legend, you're a master, you're the GOAT. And in those groups, either fill this out or talk amongst yourself and try to fill out each one of these models and kind of think about, what they are and what they're for and all that. If you're solo, same thing, maybe just in the document, try to fill this out. This is page 1 of the handout. And then later on, we'll do page 2. That's where you can take notes and stuff. And then at the end, you can maybe share out, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, so jumping into it, here are, there's 6 models that I use for co-teaching. Here's the first one, the go-to. What do you think this one is called? You are correct. This is one teach, one support. So we have 2 adults in the room, and we have all those students, nice purple students. They fit with the whole theme here. And one of them is kind of leading the class, and one is supporting. So feel free to take notes kind of in the second page of the doc as we go over this. So what are your thoughts about or experiences with this model of push and support? Is this something that you've done before? Is this something that you always do? Do you like it? Do you try not to do it? Like, kind of just think about that for a second. So this is the go-to model of support, the easiest one to jump right into. Often when I hear people say that they're co-teaching or pushing in, this is kind of what I see. You know, there'll be one teacher, the content teacher in the front, and then the support teacher maybe sitting in the back, maybe taking notes, maybe on a computer, maybe walking around. But this is kind of the common one where people are like, hey, you're co-teaching, let's go. One of the reasons for that is because they haven't been trained or they're not prepared. Another reason is the specialist might be pushing into a lot of different classes and they just have, you know, a difficult time co-planning and doing all that. So this is just the easiest way to support as much as possible. I do the one teach, one support more than I would like, to be honest. But while I do it, I am trying to vary who I help. So I try to use data to kind of support different things. So for example, I might have I don't know, like I worked in a class before where we had a kid that was in the gifted program and he was identified as gifted. He was really sharp in math and he was really sharp in other areas. But sometimes in math, we do little exit tickets or warm-ups, and he wouldn't have any idea what we're doing. So, you know, I had to kind of keep an eye on that and kind of try to use data, maybe provide scaffolded worksheets and stuff like that for him and the other students that needed it. That kind of goes into this. Maybe we'd plan during the class, like if, you know, if the kids are quietly doing some work, we might plan with the teacher real quick, or we would already have differentiated activities like the worksheets and stuff like that. And then lastly, I just try to multitask as much as possible. So, you know, you might find me making questions for a study guide while the teacher's lecturing, and I'm kind of listening to the teacher. I'm making sure students are taking notes, but I'm also being productive. Or maybe I'm making an anchor chart, you know, for the integer rules or for, you know, how to make a thesis statement or something like that, and we'll put it on the wall later. Even like making copies or organizing the Google Drive, like anything I can do to help the whole classroom environment, I'm willing to do it when I'm not working with the kids. So basically my thesis or my main point is that like maybe kind of back in the day, you didn't have a lot of kids with learning challenges. And, you know, like before inclusion was a big thing, maybe you were just kind of teaching down the middle of the road and some people got it, some people needed extensions, but you know, it's kind of like, hey, everybody's doing okay. I don't, maybe you've never had a learning support teacher before, and you know, this is the first time working with a TA or a learning support teacher, or maybe you've had some, you know, support, but you just did the one teach, one support model. But my whole thesis is that if you really want to make a difference, you got to go beyond the one teach, one support model. So if you want to go beyond, the next models of support will help you with that. So this looks similar to the last model, but it's a little bit different. Can anybody think what you might call this one? You are correct. One teach, one observe. So you still have one person in, you know, maybe in this case in the corner, and they're not in the front of the class, but they're there for a purpose. So what are some reasons why you think that you might use the one teach, one observe situation? You are correct. So if, you know, you might want to collect data on certain things. Some things I've done is like we might have a new seating chart and we want to kind of, we have some I don't know, pre-engineered or pre-discussed ideas of what we're looking at, interactions with the kids. Maybe we're doing something with, let me think, like, well, for example, we have a teacher, maybe they're working on trying to ask more kids questions, like not just the kids that pop up their hands, so I can observe that. Another thing I use it for is behavior support. So here's an example of like a student tracking sheet that I've used. This was for a sixth grader a while back that was having some difficulties with these things you can see on the left. And then what we would do is we'd say, you know, every 5 minutes or so, it'd be 9:35, 9:40, 9:45, 9:50, etc. and I check off how the kid was doing in that certain area. And then I'd also put random observations. So that's something I can do to help the classroom environment and also help individual students as I'm in there. To be honest though, this is one of the models that I don't use too much, but it's always in the back of my head as an option. So there it is, one teach, one observe. Okay, so this is number 3. What would you call this type of co-teaching model? Boom, we call it parallel teaching. And so the question is, what are the reasons you'd want to use this model some days? It looks kind of different, like you don't see this all the time. Think about it, think about it. Yes, you in the corner. Yes, ma'am. Have you done this before? Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so with some of the reasons to, sorry, I'm just having fun with myself. It's, yeah, my mom always said it doesn't take much, so forgive me. But yeah, some of the reasons are to make the group smaller for better discussions. So you might be doing the exact same thing with your groups, but you know that maybe some kids will be more interactive if there's like a smaller group, less kids to maybe the dynamics are switched. So, you know, there's less bullying or less, not bullying, but like if you got 2 friends, one of them will make fun of the other when they're talking or something like that. You can give more targeted feedback. So having a small group doing the exact same thing, you can really boom, 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 and you can really ask more questions, give more feedback to the students, etc. Instead of having 30 kids, 25 kids up in there. Maybe based on same content, but different interests. So you might have a group, I mean, for example, when I was teaching in the Middle East, in Kuwait, a lot of the kids would like modern music, like rap music and stuff like that. But then others were a little bit more traditional and liked just like Arab music, and then, like Arab Idol and just music that was in Arabic. And so maybe that's a situation where like, hey, we're going to do some activity with music, but we know that these 7 kids like this, these 12 kids like that. Let's break it up, teach the same thing. And then you can practice skills like annotating and make observations and gather data that is highly valuable. So if you only got 10 kids you're looking at, it's a lot easier for you to do those type of things. Okay, so here we are at, I don't know, number 4, I think. What would you call this one? We got 2 people in the front of the class, arms out, ready to go. What would you think this would be called? To me, I kind of call it one brain, 2 bodies, because you got to be in sync if you are team teaching. So this is kind of like more higher level co-teaching. You've been with the same person for a while, or you both really know the content and have time to co-plan. You could rock this model. I've done it in small ways, but to me, it takes 2 or 3 things to really make it happen well. So one of them is both parties have to be very familiar with the content. So if you're kind of new in this relationship, and it was August, and somebody said, "Hey, Beckett, you're working in this class," that might not be the best situation for the team teaching. A lot of co-planning goes into this, so you guys got to know, kind of like you got to have to have a pretty good idea what's coming up, who's doing what, who's stronger in what area, kind of really plan it out. And I'd say, like, if the teachers have worked together for more time, then it's really valuable. You kind of know your strengths, know what you like, know the sense of humor. I might throw a little sarcasm out there, and then the teacher will know that the kids don't always get it and will jump in, or something like that. And I'd say probably a really good tip for this is just to assume good intent, because when you're working this closely with somebody, you've got to assume that you're both there for the kids and really just trying to make it happen. So through the collaborations, through the give and take of this relationship, you got to just assume that good intent. Okay, for number 5, what do you think this would be called? I almost let it slip when I was about to ask. So we got one teacher in one part of the room, we have no teacher and a bunch of purple students in another part of the room, and then we got the teacher over there. So I guess, like, I mean, I'll just say it. This is stations. You know, we've done this a fair amount, and sometimes you do it by yourself, but it's a lot more effective when you've got another adult in the room. And kind of what I was doing in the opening activity, if you were in a watch party, by breaking it up in different groups, it's kind of different stations. Like group number 2 maybe could do it independently with a little help. Group number 3, maybe like a little extension. Group number 1, they might need a lot more support. So one adult would be with group 1, one adult might be between group 2 and 3, that type of thing. So what would you say that station teaching is good for? You know, think back, what kind of activities have you done? What you know, what use cases have you seen that's good for? Maybe throw something in the chat. You could kind of give some people ideas, because it'd be great to hear, like, there's a lot of different content, a lot of different grade levels, and stations come easier to some. So it'd be great to see what some people are talking about. But I can say for myself that I've done station teaching for different guided reading groups, or also the writing process is a really good place to do the stations. You know, you might have one group working on brainstorming, another group working on getting their outline done, another group working on recrafting it and like really, you know, taking their thesis statement to the next level, or, you know, whatever. I think that's a great way to use a different adult. Math, we do that a lot too. We might put one station just independent practice, one station to reteach, one station an extension to help the kids that are already got it. So it works out really well. Yeah, so how could this work in the writing process in particular? So I kind of touched on it a little bit, and I just want to kind of go over it. So I was in a class, it was like a pre-IB class. So basically the teacher also taught, I forgot what it was called, Lang and Lit, or whatever the DP class is called, and the language A class. And 4 or 5 of the students out of the 17 students were on my caseload. So they had dyslexia, autism, ADHD, you know, things like that. And they were, you know, having some difficulties grasping the content. And so we were working on an essay. And so we broke up the essay into 2, or the writing process into 3 stations. Station 1 was brainstorming more and then clearing up ideas. So this was led by the teacher. So this is a situation where maybe you're not always, like, you might say, oh, okay, all 4 of my students that are on my caseload are struggling with the brainstorming. Oh, I'll work with that group. But this is a situation where we switched it up, and for 2 reasons. One, just to switch it up so, you know, I'm not working with the same group every time, but also because the teacher really knew the content and could really jumpstart the brainstorming while I worked with not this group. So station 2 was just independently knocking out their writing and just getting, you know, pen to paper. And then I was working with station 3. So this was the higher group that needed a mini lesson on the perfect thesis statement. So I worked with them. I took them to a breakout room next door, and I just had about 5 or 6, 7 students. And we took their thesis statements that they already had. So they already finished brainstorming, and I think they already finished writing most of everything. And they just wanted to really take it to the next level to get that 7 or the 8 in the IB situation. Or maybe we didn't have 8s, and I can't remember. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, that's one way we broke it up. What about math? Has anybody done a stations approach in math? How could that look like? Any ideas? Yes, any takers? So here's an example here in Math 8. The objective was graphing linear equations. And at first we had a warm-up, and then I graded the warm-up while the teacher did a whole group activity. So he was doing something related to the content, and I was sitting there, ta, 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 ta. And I think sometimes I did it on Google Forms, so we got instant feedback, and other times we've used other devices. And then based off the warm-up data, we had some parameters, and then we broke up the classes into 3 groups, and then we saw the next slide. So station 1, one teacher reteaching the prerequisite skills or providing highly scaffolded worksheets. So that's like an independent, like give them a highly scaffolded worksheet while I work with another station. And then we're giving strategies, color coding, and really helping reteach the skills that we saw that this group of students was lacking. Here's an example of a scaffolded worksheet. So basically the warm-up previously just had this equation here, and then they had to graph it. But when we saw that some students couldn't do it, we gave them this scaffolded worksheet that I developed, and it went step by step by step. And then it had some kind of meta questions at the end to help them really process what they're doing. Station 2, this can be more of a basic review with immediate feedback as one or both teachers walk around. So that was just kind of like, hey, you might have got one wrong on the warm up. Let's just do a little bit more practice and we're going to check in on you. And then station 3, this is where students can be more independently working and gaining practice in maybe taking it to the next level, taking it to the extended level, or in this school, it was a 3-4, like basically a 2 was approaching, a 3 was proficient, and a 4 was like master. So, we might help them get to the 4. So one of our philosophies that year was this quote: you don't want to do the math until you do it right. You want to do it until you don't get it wrong. So Mr. Osborne is the one that used to say that, but I think he got that from somewhere else. So that was our guiding thing. It wasn't like, oh, okay, they got it. It was like, let's really get it, and let's make sure they got this. And it worked out. Pretty much everybody passed those couple years I was co-teaching with him. Okay, guys, so this might be a good time to pause the video and try to fill out the handout, page 2, if you have it downloaded and you want to fill that out. That's something that I'm hoping that maybe you can just have in the future, and you can kind of review the models that way. Also, if you're in a watch party or you're solo, why don't you take a minute and consider these questions. Discussion question number 2. Is it inclusion to have students work in a separate room? So maybe you're doing parallel teaching, and instead of both groups in the class, you separate them, go to the breakout room, or you go to the learning support room, or you're doing the alternative teaching method that we're going to talk about in a minute, and you might break the groups up like that. Or sometimes students ask for it. Sometimes students say, hey, it'd be great if we could go to the learning support room. Me and these 5 kids, 5 kids like, yeah, I want to go. They can ask more questions, it's quieter, stuff like that. So is it inclusion if they go to my room, or if I work with them in the hallway, or the teacher works with them in the hallway or a breakout space? And then a follow-up question is, if we did that every time they asked, would it still be inclusion or push-in? They're doing the same curricular skills and content and taking the same assessments. That is a question. So think about that. What is inclusion? What is push-in? Are you pushing in if they're out, but they're still doing the same content? So maybe pause the video. If you're in a watch party, think about this, talk to each other. And then also it'd be great, especially if you're solo, to put this answer in the chat or the WOVA comments. It'd be great to see what people think, because to be honest, this question is a question I've had for over a decade. And I think I have my answer, but I don't know what other people think. I mean, I know what the people that I've worked with think and stuff, but I'm really curious to see what you guys think. All right, now that you had a chance to think about it a little bit, I'll tell you kind of what I think. So for example, myself, to me, if we're doing like a parallel teaching and my room is like 10 meters down the hallway and I've got a whiteboard and I got some comfy chairs and students like to work there, to me, it makes sense and it's more effective than to have 2 groups in like a kind of small space and it's a little bit loud and things like that. So it makes sense for me to pull the group that way. And then also, if you think about like flex mod schedules that sometimes they do to help with interventions and stuff, you might have the whole group, like all the English 10 kids will have a 1 lecture, but then they'll break up and some kids will go to extension, some kids will go to support, some interventions, stuff like that. And I mean, you think if they're all getting similar content, they're all taking the same test, they're all getting taught by both teachers at different points, is it still inclusion? To me, I say yeah, because the alternative is what I've seen, where you got like a resource teacher, like back in the States, and they're just they have their group and they're there in a separate room all year. There's 10 kids, they all have IEPs, and there's a resource teacher. Maybe she's teaching a content she doesn't even know that well. And for me, I think when I'm co-planning and I'm co-teaching and we do pull out, to me, it's all good. But I'm curious what you guys think. I mean, you guys might change my schema down there in the comment section. So hit it up. Okay. I think this is number 5, maybe 6. I don't even know why I'm trying to remember. But what would you guys call this one? So you got a majority of the class over here, and there's 1 teacher. one stick figure. And then you got a smaller percentage of the class to the left with another teacher. What do you guys think that's called? Oh, yes. Oh, okay. Nope, that's actually not correct. It's actually this one. The alternative teaching, number 6, the last one. So one teacher will teach while the other teacher works with a small group, kind of teaching the same standards, but like maybe with a differentiated activity. So AKA small groups. So the teachers realize that a certain group of students may need a quick reteach or review of instruction. They may need to learn something in a different way, or etc. So yeah, so you might deliberately break up the groups so you can, hear them read a little bit more. Or you could base it off different reading levels. You might want to present a mini lesson. Just you want to maybe more closely see how they solve problems and stuff like that. Those would be good reasons to do this. Or another reason might be that one of the teachers in the classroom notices that there's a group of students that maybe are going down the path of like a misconception or something like that. So maybe on the fly you might do something, or in planning with the other teacher, you guys decide to break up the groups a little bit and keep going with the content, but have an alternative lesson that's maybe more scaffolded, different modalities, things like that. The main thing to remember is that we're not modifying anything. So the students still have the whole end goal, the assessment's the same, the standards are the same, but we're just differentiating. Not all students have to do the same thing at the same time. That's the key part of differentiation. And by using this model, we're able to help differentiate and help all the kids progress. So here's an example from an English class, English 8 that I used to work in. And if I remember correctly, we were reading like Romeo, or I can't remember. We were reading something that was a little difficult for all the students to understand. And there's about 4 or 5 students on my caseload in that class. And generally I'd be in the class supporting in different ways. But me and the teacher in our co-planning session, we met weekly, and then we'd meet for an hour, and then I'd go away and from my notes make things like this. And so we knew that the kids were kind of having a difficulty with understanding who the characters were, and then also with the character arc. So I made this graphic organizer, and then I took maybe 7 students, not all just the kids with the IEPs or ILPs, but just the kids that were having a little bit of trouble based off of our little formative assessments. And we went to my room, and I was able to give them this graphic organizer. And then I also had it on the whiteboard, or my whiteboard or something. Wait, the whiteboard? Yeah, like I wrote it up. And then we read the story. So we read the same story as they were doing in the regular class, but we scaffolded it this way. And the kids were able to get a way better understanding instead of just sitting in a class for 40 minutes or whatever, 20, 30 minutes, not understanding it. So for me, you think, oh, okay, well, they're doing some alternative, they're in a different room. But to me, it's amazing because the alternative is them not understanding it and then, failing the test or, failing the class. And yeah, so the alternative is a way that I've had a lot of success with. Here's a math example. So this was, I guess we're doing volumes and stuff like that. I forgot what that unit's called. But what happened? Oh yeah, so basically the teacher had given some instruction. Sorry, I'm thinking back. This is like from 5 years ago, and I didn't note it down, or maybe I should check my notes. Oh yeah, so this is where we use quiz scores to get a group, and yeah, I should have just looked at my notes. What am I doing? So we use quiz scores to see what students were still having trouble with this, and we had a double block on Wednesdays, so it was like a 2-hour period. So for part of that block, we all did the same thing. And then for the next part, we had some students work on this little worksheet that I developed. So I met with the teacher, we talked, and then from there, I planned and I developed this thing. It takes a lot of time, but this is kind of what I'm talking about with the situation where you want to do what you can that year, save everything, stay organized, and then hopefully the next year you can add more stuff. And there's, as you go, your toolkit gets bigger and bigger. So like, yeah, I taught with this teacher for a couple of years. And by the time we were done, I had a ton of stuff. I just looked back at it recently because some kids were having trouble with coordinate planes and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, what did I do with that in the past? And I saw all this stuff and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get there with this grade now, math 6, because this is math 8. So yeah, this is an example from math. All right, so folks, here are some tips on ways to pull off the co-teaching relationship or the push-in situation. So one, scaffolded worksheets that certain students are given. So like I just showed you, that could be given to students, so you don't have to like do a lot of, different structures. It could just be like, boom, independent work, you guys do this, you guys do that. Plan ahead and tell the students. Basically, you don't want surprises. You want the kids to always know what's coming. And so they're not like, wow, why am I doing something different? And sometimes we give them the options like, hey, listen, you got a 2 on your last test. If you want to do better, you said your goals are 4. This worksheet will help. Do you want to do this or would you prefer, that type of stuff? Like give the students agency, but also try to guide them to help make the right choices so they can progress at the right pace. Have students go directly to the breakout room to avoid alienation. So a lot of times they're just, the kids are, I'm right down the hallway, boom, they show up to me. I tell the teacher for attendance and, they just come with me and they work, and it's easier than them leaving if we're doing some alternative stuff like or parallel teaching. Have flexible spaces too, so breakout rooms, hallways, etc. Some schools I've worked at, a lot of kids were working like just in the hallways, or teachers would work in little groups. And having that vibe is really helpful when you're trying to differentiate and you're trying to do different models, because the kids are used to doing different things in that sense. All right, folks. So I'm curious, in what situations do you see this being helpful using the alternative co-teaching model? Or what situations have you used it before? Mm-hmm. Um, Ma'am, can you get off your cell phone, please? Please pay attention. Nah. Um, did somebody look up? Nah, so some possible ideas are maybe kids need a different pace. So some students might need an accelerated pace. Some students might need a more slower pace to help make sure that they're getting the foundations. Some situations, some kids might have a lot of questions, but they might not want to ask all those questions in a group of 20 plus students. So having an alternative setting could be a really good situation. Based on reading levels, that's something that we've done before. And if you have differentiated something by topic, but want to have a whole class type of dialogue, then having the alternative thing could be helpful. Just if you had a reading about football, but then some of the kids don't like football, something like that. Okay, so folks, here's a little review. This is page 2 of the handout. So with some people in your watch group, or if you're solo, do the following things real quick, if you want to on your sheet, or just think about it. So with each of the 6 models that we have, decide if each model should be used rarely, occasionally, or often. So I'm going to put the sheet up again for you if you haven't downloaded it from the Wova app, and just take a minute, look at it, and pause the video and try to decide how often you would use each model. Okay, here you go. So these are the 6 models, and just think about how often you would want to use each one. Rarely, from time to time, or often. Okay, folks, so these are the answers that I have that I've kind of considered over the years. Rarely is the one teach, one observe, and one teach, one support. So if you agree with me, you can mark that on your sheet for posterity. Occasionally, we're talking alternative teaching and team teaching, just because, like both of those can take a lot of work. And, I would say alternative teaching could be a little bit more than occasionally, just in my experience, but also maybe, well, I guess we have to define occasionally. And then often, parallel teaching, perhaps just kind of like trying to break things up, give kids, more feedback, stuff like that. And then station teaching is something that is always on my mind. I think stations are amazing, and I think that's why a lot of us do it. So do you guys agree? If not, maybe you can throw a little comment somewhere and we can kind of see what you're thinking. Or if you do agree, just mark these down on page 2 of your handout, and that way you can have that for later. And so, guys, this could be a good chance right now to fill out the rest of page 2 of the handout, just while everything's fresh. So, pause the video, take a minute, and fill out those tables, kind of, or whatever, those sections, and get a feel for what you have considered during this presentation. And if you're in a watch party, this could be a good time to chat with your colleagues and kind of see if they're on the same vibe and same page of, when you could use certain things and stuff like that. Okay, so now it's time to apply the knowledge. I got a couple scenarios that I'm going to give you, and we'll see what you think, which model of co-teaching would be the best. So here's scenario 1. Take a minute and read that. So if you had a chance to read it, think about which of the 6 co-teaching models you think would be the best in this situation. And I will tell you what I think is the best one right now. Spoiler alert. So I think the alternative teaching method could be the best in this situation. And I wrote some notes on why. So let me read what I wrote. You may have another text that is differentiated by reading level, but still grade level text. And you can still identify text features with a smaller group of students in part of the room, or maybe with a scaffolded worksheet done independently, or in the breakout room if it's near the hallway. Whatever makes sense and fits into what your students are used to. If you have it set up where different groups of students work with the 2 teachers and different students go at different times outside, it won't seem so stigmatizing. Also, if you give students choice all the time or often about which level of activity they feel they're ready for, then they're going to be ready for that. All right, next one. So take a second and figure out what you think that is. So they want to assess how often students are connecting to the previous speaker in the class discussion. So we've given sentence starters, we've modeled, we fishbowled, and we want the discussions to be tight. So what model would be the best to assess that progress? All right. For me, I would say 1 teach, 1 observe. I don't know if you would agree, but to me, I think that'd be an optimal time to use that format. All right, scenario 3. Check that out and think what the answer could be. So for this one, I would say stations would be a good approach. And it could be debatable, but for me, it's kind of like a formative situation, and you might be looking at different text during this, time period. Parallel teaching might be an option too. I don't know if anybody said that, but I'm going with stations because that's my favorite. All right, y'all. So here is my tips to co-teach or teach with another adult. And what's that word say? Well, so yeah, the key is you have 2 adults in the room. You want all the kids to grow. What are some tips? You're dealing with another adult in the same classroom. So I am putting this here. Meet regularly. Maybe have a common planning time if that's possible. I'd say even like when I try to just have those weekly meetings. Right now, I have 3 push-in classes, and I only have a regular meet with one teacher. But even then, we try to meet, even if we don't have anything pressing, because stuff comes up. So it's really nice to have like a regular time and get the things flowing. Google Drive to collab has been amazing. Before Google Drive, it was a whole different story, co-teaching. But since then, I just love it. So many documents, so many links to other stuff. You can see the test, you can see all the resources. I usually add a learning support folder. So for all those like scaffolded worksheets and different things that I introduce, I'll put there for posterity. And it's just so easy to collaborate when you have a Google Drive. Also use Atlas or some type of curriculum mapping, like Manage Back is what we use at my school now. And that's where I will, when we co-plan and I make things, I'll add that to the unit plan online. And then the next year we'll have all that documented. And 10 years from now, when we're both gone, people can still look back and kind of see what we did, so people don't have to reinvent the wheel. Live the idea that they are not your kids or my kids, but our kids. To me, that seems basic, but every year I've worked in special education, I always have a fair amount of people that will say, oh yeah, your kids need this, or your kids didn't do this, and things like that. And to this day, it still makes me feel a little uncomfortable when I hear that, to be honest. And so I just always try to stick with the ethos that we're all working together on this. And don't take things too personally. We are all there for the kids. I've had teachers be really rude to me before in like co-planning sessions or just on the fly. And I think sometimes it's maybe because they were defensive about something. Maybe, like I don't know. Like I remember one time I was working with a math teacher, and maybe about half the students failed a quiz. And while we were discussing things, like what to do next, the teacher wasn't being super clear. And I was asking follow-up questions. I thought that they got kind of defensive, and then they tried to make me feel like I was ignorant. And, like I could have gotten mad and got, reactive or defensive as well. But for me, I was just trying to help kids. And I know she wakes up every day to help kids. So it's just a matter of like trying to get past any bumps and whatnot. And then know each other's strengths. I've always loved writing, but math came later. So I wouldn't say math is not a strength, but writing and like kind of like humanities and that type is more my strength. So, like I know that. And then if I'm working with other teacher, I know what they're into, and we can go from there. So what tips did I miss? What tips or ideas can you share with the group? Throw them in the WOVA app comment section for this presentation. If you got tips on things you've done that really help the process, that'd be awesome if you could put them in the chat or the comment section, because I'm trying to get my schema lifted. So throw it in there. Discussion question number 3, clustering classes. One tip could be to strategically place students in a class for support. But my question is, do you think it's okay to cluster students with learning needs in a class with a certain percentage of other peers with needs in order to best support them? That's another one of those philosophical things. What are people thinking? It'd be great if you guys are in in the watch party, talk to each other. Maybe some of you guys can add what you're just saying into the WOVA app, because this is something that I've been doing it, like I said, like 18 years, and I still don't have an answer to this question, but I know what I advocate for. And so I'm kind of curious if other people agree. And then just a couple final thoughts. Did my face disappear? Let me check this. I don't know. Well, let's see what's up with that. All right. So some final thoughts. The models of push and support can sometimes be done with no learning support teacher or when they're not available. It's all about differentiation. So maybe I co-plan with the teacher, like I put that image out before with all the different classes I've collaborated with or co-taught or pushed in. And even with the collaboration, we're differentiating the content, or we're talking about the process or this product, giving them menu options for how to show their knowledge, all that stuff. You don't need 2 adults in the class for all that stuff. So a lot of times, more bang for the buck if you're just thinking differentiation. And then push-in has to make an impact on that class. So just because there are 2 adults in the room is not a reason to place a student who is struggling in the class into that classroom. you know? So if there's a kid that's having trouble in English 6 and they're like, oh, Beckett's co-teaching English 6, there has to be a reason to put that kid in there. So question is, what are we doing that makes this room better than the one without push and support? Or like I was saying before, you could just have a 20-year-old TA like I used to be in that class, a lot cheaper. You know, like, what are they doing? What am I doing as a learning support teacher? Like, how do we know that the kids are getting benefit? Here's an example of one of the sheets I use. This is how I progress monitor in a push-in class. So, for example, I have this sheet, the spreadsheet for every kid with an ILP in that class. And then sometimes with RTI, maybe some other kids that were doing interventions. And so we'll just look at the data. And so you see, this is August 27th. We had a quiz, they got 75%. Next quiz, 50%. A couple, September 24th, we'd had a test. They had a 54% overall. These are all different criterias. And then after that, we did a little intervention in October. And then the next quiz, we saw this and blah, blah, blah. And then we saw 86% on the next test, 30% increase in one test. And then, we got notes here. So these are the type of things that I do, doing interventions, tracking it, showing progress, monitoring or whatever. So I could tell somebody like a counselor, like, hey, maybe put them in my class, check this out. We're doing these interventions. This is how the kids are progressing. So this is just one thing I wanted to share. So yeah, if you want to go beyond, you have to do more than just popping in the class and doing the one teach, one assist. If you got any questions, throw them in the WOVA. I'll be here today, which would be December 2nd or 3rd. The first day during the SENIA conference, I'll be checking live. And then for the next 4 months, it's open to ask questions and whatnot. So whenever you see this, put some questions in the app and, hopefully anybody will answer. I'll throw my 2 cents in and we'll go from there. So I want to give SENIA their proper dues, or their props, as the cool kids say these days, because they've had a lot of conferences going on the past, a few years that I've been hearing about it. This year, I went to the one in Bonn for SENIA Europe, and then I'm participating in this virtual, and then they got one in South Africa coming up. And yeah, it's been great. SENIA's really doing their thing. The one in Bonn was nice, super well planned, super chill, beautiful school, nice campus. But anyways, I just thought I'd throw this up here. So the SENIA Africa is coming up February 16th. I don't know. I've been to SA, South Africa, twice, and it is cracking. So I don't know. If it's not too late for you to sign up, you might want to check that out. So while we weren't able to meet face-to-face today, I'm sure I'll see you at a SENIA event in the future or some other type of conference, hopefully. And in the meantime, you can hit me up at collectionsofaspecialeducator@gmail.com. I got a website. It's kind of like a blog that has a lot of stuff. And actually, that blog links to my website that has a ton of resources, just free stuff, like forums and stuff like that. Check the handouts. I've got links to some of the forums and other stuff also, and some of these sites. And then, I got a YouTube channel, Collections of a Special Educator. Check that out. I just have content about like learning support, special education and whatnot. So yeah, hopefully I'll see some of you guys in the future. In the meantime, I'll be checking you guys out on the WOVA app. Hit me up, send me emails if you got any questions. I don't know. I don't know what the WOVA comment section will look like. If it gets like a lot of things, feel free to just hit me up personally on that email I just shout out there. And I think we're cool. This is kind of like, we can keep this like a PLN, what's that called? The Professional Learning Network. You remember those things back in the day where we'd have all the discussion groups on Twitter and, like everybody was connecting. I miss that, but I just don't do social media anymore, really. So maybe it still happens. I don't know. So yeah, WOVA will be my social media for the next 4 months. I will see you there.